Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 39 of my weekly live Q&A on this Thursday afternoon. I know a little bit of a different time set. Obviously, I used to or normally go live on Tuesdays, but we've had some schedule changes in the last couple weeks and haven't been able to go live on Tuesday mornings. But nonetheless, I'm still here, so we're gonna tackle some of the questions here submitted via Twitter. Then we'll take things to the YouTube live chat as we usually do, and then tackle those questions there. So, like always, plenty to talk about. Always something going on in the mixed martial arts world. So, let's get things started, shall we? I hope everybody's having a good week. We got Bellator 251 tonight. Corey Anderson is making his Bellator debut. Then we got UFC Fight Night, ESPN Plus 40 or something like that this Saturday. McDonald's coffee, by the way, no homemade Colombian coffee, unfortunately, but the McDonald's iced coffee is not too bad. It's all right. Dunkin' Donuts is always the best as far as iced coffee goes, but neither here or there. Remember, you can always submit questions via the YouTube live chat. No need to use the Twitter machine in order to submit questions. So again, if you didn't get to ask questions via Twitter, you can submit some in the YouTube live chat, and I'll get to those in the later part of this video. So let's get this thing started. The first question is by A Paso of Wokeness. Almost a tradition here. The biggest Dustin Poirier hater in the world. And yes, he did have a Dustin Poirier question for this one. I think he always will. I think that's part of his thing. But anyways, he says, if Israel Adesanya, beats Jan Blachowicz, becoming double champ, then Jones beats winner of Stipe versus Francis, becoming heavyweight champion, do you think Izzy could be the first to get 3 belts in 3 divisions? So there's a lot of ifs there, man. I don't know. I think it's certainly a possibility. I mean, almost anything is possible, but within the grand scheme of things, if you talk about fighters who could potentially get 3 belts in 3 different weight classes, I think it would either be all right, turning up the volume. Hopefully that's a little better. I'll speak louder too. It'll be either Henry Cejudo. I mean, he's already got 2, 125, 135. I don't like his chances of winning one at 145, but I would say there is a chance, especially as Volkanovski being the champion, because Volkanovski is fairly a good matchup for him. And I don't really mean that stylistically. I think there might be some other fighters that are better stylistically suited for Henry Cejudo. But as far as size-wise, I think, Volkanovski is not a very big guy. I've stood next to both. I think Cejudo's a bit shorter. Obviously, Volkanovski's thicker. But the size difference is not as big as opposed to, say, a Max Holloway or Jair Rodriguez. Jair is quite big. Zabit's like 6 foot tall. Obviously, Henry Cejudo, I think he's like 5'3" or something like that, or like 5'4". So there's a big difference there, So I think skill can only take you to a certain point. Then weight, that's why there's weight classes, and size will start making a difference in bouts. So I think Cejudo might have a chance to be that person if that opportunity ever comes knocking, and if obviously Volkanovski is still champion. And then on top of that, if we flip to Israel Adesanya, I think if he does win the 205 belt, which honestly I would favor Jan Blachowicz in a fight, to be quite frank with you. But it wouldn't be far fetched. I mean, 185 is certainly. There's a big jump from 185 to 205, but some fighters have done it successfully. And Adesanya being the champion, the very best in that weight class, there's reasons to believe he could do it, right? I think actually most people would disagree with me and would give him the edge in a Jan Blachowicz fight. And then with John Jones, it'd be different because, he wouldn't really be fighting a true heavyweight. He'd be fighting a light heavyweight, having success at heavyweight. That'd be John Jones, of course, if he becomes champion. So he'd have a chance there. I mean, but I see it very unlikely. As I said, I would favor Jan Blachowicz in a fight with Adesanya. And with John Jones, I would favor John Jones. So, again, 2 big upsets he would have to overcome. And not only that, he would have to hope that John Jones actually wins a heavyweight title. But never say never. I think it's somewhat I mean, out of all the champions on the roster, like I said, I think it's Israel Adesanya or Henry Cejudo, the two guys who could likely become champions in three different weight classes. I'm trying to think of any others. Maybe in his prime, like Jose Aldo would have been a good candidate. Obviously, a complete force at 145 pounds, and at 155, especially back then when he was much bigger, I would have liked his chances to beat some of the guys. Let me look up history of UFC champions, because we got to keep in mind who was champion at 155 when he was champion at 145, right? So let's see here. All right, so Aldo ruled the featherweight division from basically 2011 to 2014, a nice stretch. 1,848 days. So that would make it from April 2011 to October 2014, meaning at 155. Meaning that would have been Frankie Edgar and Benson Henderson. Yeah. Frankie Edgar, Benson Henderson, and a bit of Anthony Pettis, because he became champion in 2013. So a prime Aldo, I would have liked his chances against Frankie Edgar. I mean, he beat Frankie Edgar a bunch of times at 145. Henderson at that time, I'd still favor Aldo, I think, and Anthony Pettis, I think I'd favor Aldo as well, but slightly. I think Pettis would have been an interesting matchup for him. And then, he dropped to 135, although he came up short in a title fight against Peter Yan. I do think he's still a top 5 bantamweight. Maybe if he would have done the drop sooner, I think he probably would have been the best candidate to win 3 belts in different weight classes. But anyways, he never decided to go up a weight class, and I think he dropped down to bantamweight a little bit too late into his career. But to answer your questions, I think I would favor Cejudo to becoming a 3-weight champion, then followed by Israel Adesanya. A lot of ifs for Israel Adesanya. Plus, he's only champion in 1 weight class. Cejudo has been champion in 2. So a lot less work for him to get to that milestone. But real quick, interesting stuff with the Israel Adesanya versus Jan Blachowicz booking. Or not booking, because it's not yet booked, but I guess plans. I wonder... Not that I'm saying it's not real, but it just, I don't know, it seems kind of backwards. I know there isn't like a super clear contender at 185 pounds. I mean, in my opinion, a super clear contender would be Robert Whittaker, but maybe, because of the way he lost that first fight against Adesanya, maybe he wouldn't be considered by others a true number 1 contender. But anyways, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that booking. I feel like if we were going to see a super fight, champion versus champion, it was going to be something much bigger with Jon Jones. Jan literally just won the title. And then this weekend, we got Glover Teixeira fighting Thiago Santos. And if either guy wins, especially Thiago Santos, I think it'd be a no-brainer to send him next to Jan Blachowicz. I mean, Santos has history with Blachowicz. They fought before, right? I mean, it just seems like complete sense to make a booking with whoever wins that main event bout this weekend. But and also, like I said, I don't like Israel Adesanya's chances against Blachowicz. I don't think they're too far off. I think I would favor slightly Jan. I just think Jan is like... I think Jan could find success at heavyweight. Like, that guy's huge, and he has a lot of power. So I don't know how Israel Adesanya will deal with that, to be quite frank. I don't think Blachowicz will be much intimidated by his striking. I don't think he'd be a guy that sits back like Paulo Costa. And I think moving forward, the guy's got technique and he's got power. And, he does have some grappling as well. So I don't know. I don't know how I like Adesanya's chances in that one. But it's an interesting kind of out of nowhere random, let's just do champ versus champ fight idea. I don't think it makes much sense. But we'll see. In my opinion, I think Blachowicz, I mean, he just literally won the title. That guy should be defending his belt at 205 pounds against the winner of whoever we see this weekend. And he should probably do that 2 or 3 more times before he gets a champ versus champ super fight. Really, champ versus champ super fights should only be once contenders in their respective divisions are exhausted, or the champion has proven to be so dominant that, you know, they need a bigger challenge, so they look at other weight classes. They look elsewhere for that bigger challenge. So, you know, John Jones challenging a champion at heavyweight would have made sense. I mean, the guy's held the belt there for quite some time. I wouldn't hate if Adesanya would do it, just because, you know, he's already defended the belt, you know, a few times. But Jan, I don't think he's there. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But just weird booking, in my opinion, or a weird idea, because it's not yet booked. Like I said, if you got questions, make sure you throw them in the YouTube live chat, and I'll get to those in the later part of this video. So now moving on to a question by Michael Otero. Not really MMA here, but obviously a little bit involved, mostly about the election here. Says, did Jorge Masvidal have any influence in the election? Ben Askren claims Miami-Dade County, or well, county would be, was influenced by Jorge's endorsement. Is there anything to this? So I would say this. There's actually no way of knowing 100% because of, you know, you need statistics, right? And I don't think those are out there. I think not so long ago, and let me Google this real quick, Kylie Jenner posted on her Instagram, because Instagram is doing this thing where, or was doing this thing where you can, you know, put stickers on and tell people to vote and stuff like that. And they're kind of doing a campaign on that end to promote, you know, voter turnout. So let me see. I think she had some crazy number that she got like millions of people to vote just because she posted something on Instagram. Let me see. Just for fun here, let's look this up. I can't believe I'm talking about Kylie Jenner in one of these things. So yeah, she caused a surge in voter registration. And it was a thirst trap too. I think it was a thoughty picture. Let me see here. So yeah, vote.org saw an 1,500% increase in traffic from Instagram from Kylie Jenner's post, and a total of 80% increase in users interacting with the voter registration tool. And yeah, she looks fine as hell in that photo. It's pretty wild. It's pretty crazy. I don't know if Masvidal will have that same effect on people. Obviously, he did actually do a lot more than Kylie as far as telling people to vote. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I think Miami-Dade County, if you look at it, much like Masvidal, there's a ton of Cubans. Also a ton of Venezuelans. And the thing with Cuba and Venezuela is that they do have, you know, most of the people that flee from Cuba or Venezuela is in fear of the government, because the government has too much influence on its people, right? Like, for example, I'm from Colombia. Colombia is actually quite the opposite, as well as other South American and Central American countries, where the government is a bit too hands off. So you're like, yo, we need help. And precisely that's why people leave a lot of the countries, because there's not much help, whether it's security purposes, you know, with guerrilla groups or cartel activity, if you're talking Mexico, or just even government helps. Like even in like Colombia, like in Bogota, like there are public schools and there are some good ones, but for the most part, really everyone goes to private school. Like everyone, even people like low income, because it's just not a thing. Like usually, like public services are not very good. So you know, one of the nice things about the U.S. is that, you know, public schools can actually be very, very good. There's also public universities. There's also public universities in Colombia. But just the private sector as far as education is far much bigger than it is in the U.S. So anyways, I'm going on a little rant here, but with Venezuela and Cuba, it's completely the opposite. The government has too much intervention and poor intervention as well. So it's hard for me to be like, because a lot of people get shocked at the idea that a lot of Latinos, such as Masvidal, are voting and supporting Trump. But, you know, I haven't lived in a communist regime, so I don't have that experience, so it's hard for me to like, relate. But dude, there's so much support down here, and I don't think it's all caused by Masvidal. I think, of course, having a big celebrity be outspoken about it and endorsing, Trump, I think that will obviously drive attention to that and support, or at least from the people that already support, it would draw even more support. But down here in South Florida, like it's a crazy contrast, because like I was living in New York just a few months ago, and there you just saw, like, you even see like Bernie signs still, and a lot of Biden signs, obviously, and you rarely see anything about Trump. I mean, all the Trump supporters there are pretty much closeted. Whereas in Florida, it's completely the opposite. Like, you don't see anything regarding Biden support. It's all Trump. You see it in boats going around the canal, with flags, trucks, windows, etc. So I don't think Masvidal, again, I don't know. We don't know the extent of his influence, but I don't think he was responsible for Trump being popular down here in South Florida. Just, I think he's a representative of how many people in South Florida feel about, politics as of now, especially, regarding the presidential election. But yeah, there's no way to know unless there is some sort of analytics study, much like they did here with Kylie Jenner's Instagram account, to see how many people voted and how much traffic he caused with again with voting registration sites and all that. So it's hard to tell, but it can't hurt. It can't hurt. Also, Anuel, Little Pump, Trump accidentally called him Lil Pimp. Lil Pump is a Broward kid. He actually doesn't live too far off from here, from where I'm at, recording this or streaming this live. But I honestly don't know how much Lil Pump knows about politics. I honestly think he's just like, obviously he's made a great deal of money through his music career, and I think a lot of people that are wealthy may not necessarily know too much about politics, but they do know that Biden has plans on raising taxes to everyone making $400,000 and up. So to these big celebrities that, and these people that make big money, obviously that would hurt them. And I think that's a big reason why you see some of the support with some of these really famous people like Lil Pump. I don't necessarily think he knows much about what's going on. Or maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to have a conversation with that guy. But from what I've seen, all he says is Trump 2020, and that's it. All right, so enough about Lil Pump and Kylie Jenner. Another question here by A Passive Wokeness. He says, is Dana finally investing into 125 men's flyweight? Tough will be at 135 and 185, but just about everyone drops down a weight class if they make it onto the UFC. Not really, man. I mean, it's obviously like a big story that a lot of fighters move up a weight class because they see Tough as a good opportunity to get into the UFC, so they move up a weight class to compete. We've certainly seen that. I mean, Diego Sanchez fought. That was very early on, but more recent examples would be like Macy Chiasson, right? Competed at 145, and the Ultimate Fighter ended up fighting at 135, or was it the opposite? It was the opposite, right? 135, and then she dropped to 125. Tony Ferguson, right? A guy that competed at welterweight, ended up at lightweight, and many others. But a lot of the fighters usually stay in their respective weight classes. I would actually dare to say that more fighters stay in their weight classes than they do drop. So I don't see this as an investment into men's flyweight. I think if they would have wanted to invest in men's flyweight, then they would have had an Ultimate Fighter for 125 pounds, not 135. But I think 135, and I said this on Monday's episode of Hablemos MMA, it was such a weird pick. I think 185, I kind of understand it. There isn't right now like a huge line of contenders at 185, and I think that division does need a little bit of fresh blood. It's not the greatest. It's not a bad division. I'm not saying it needs help, but I don't think it's a great division. It's not the best division in the UFC. I think 135 at this point in time is the best division the UFC has right now. And part of that is because they have so much talent. I mean, we saw Casey Kenny versus Nathaniel Wood just a few weeks ago, and that was a world-class fight. I mean, I don't want to use world class because world class, I feel like you should be very world class is world class, right? You should be very careful about using that word, and because then it just becomes a regular thing, and it shouldn't be. But I would say it was a very high level fight, right? It was definitely a fight that between two very skilled guys, a fight that looked to be between two guys that were in the top 10, and they weren't even ranked. You know what I'm saying? That's how good the bantamweight division is. Like, you can look, for the most part, and I've said this before in other live Q&As, you can look at the top three of each division, and anybody there usually could be champion, right? Unless you get like a freak dominant force like Valentina Shevchenko. Then you go, yeah, not even the top two can, or the top number one contender can even compete against the champion. But usually the belt could be disputed between, the first two, maybe three, right? But bantamweight is so good that, like, you can almost say that about the top 15. Like, there's some guys in the top 15 that you go, give them a few years and it wouldn't be far-fetched if they end up fighting for the title. Like, that wouldn't be crazy at all. So to put more talent into that division, I think it's actually even a wrongdoing because, again, you're going to have guys that are very, very elite, not even fighting in the rankings, and it just creates a bigger mess. I think the division is perfect as it is, and just leave it. Any more talent would overwhelm it and override the system. So I don't get the 135-pound division. I do get the 185. I think right now 145 could use some help. I mean, there are some nice names, right? But not really, kind of. I mean, Brian Ortega's a nice name. Korean Zombies, it looks like he had a very tough defeat. He's a fighter that's been around for quite some time, so you have questions about how much longer he's going to stick around. Zabit is obviously a nice prospect, Volkanovski, Max Holloway, but I think even then, that division could use a little bit of names, even though it's a good division. It could use some power. So yeah, I would have done 145, 185. I don't really get the decision behind bantamweight for the Ultimate Fighter. So I don't know. But I haven't seen the UFC, and to answer your question specifically, I don't see the UFC investing anything at flyweight right now. I mean, even with some of the decisions they're making, I mean, I like Alex Perez. I think he's got fantastic boxing, very exciting fighter, but that should have been Brandon Moreno fighting Davison Figueiredo, right? And even before that decision, they brought down Cody Garbrandt to challenge Figueiredo. Like, that doesn't make sense. If you want to invest in that division, you invest in people that are there, right? You promote them. You get them out there. Obviously, it's a little harder to do with the pandemic, but you just don't see much at flyweight. You just don't hear much of flyweight. So, yeah, I just kind of think that they're just keeping it just to keep a belt around. And look, that's fine. If they don't think, flyweight has a big return, it's a business move. And at the end of the day, this is a business, right? But yeah, I don't think the UFC is currently investing at flyweight. At least they're not releasing a bunch of fighters. The Seaside wants to know who could fight Ryan Hall. I mean, anybody, but Ryan Hall is a fun fighter, man. I don't know. I know he has difficulty getting opponents, but I feel like there's also some good names willing to fight him because he is kind of like a Khamzat Chimaev, where he's not super highly ranked, but he's very good. I would say he's a little more proven than Khamzat. He obviously won the Ultimate Fighter, and he's beaten some solid names. But again, a guy that, like, he's not super high up in the rankings, very skilled, but that nobody wants to fight, and has a good name, right? Usually, there's many ingredients that compose that kind of position for a fighter. I think a guy like Leon Edwards is like kind of like similar, but he's just missing that sort of star power and that fan interest, right? I'm not saying that Ryan Hall is like a super big star, but certainly an interesting fighter that, like, people want to see and that draws attention, at least from the hardcore base and definitely the jiu-jitsu world as well. But yeah, I really like that Ricardo Lamas matchup. I know Ricardo Lamas retired, so I'm not trying to pitch that, but I thought that was a fight that made a lot of sense. Look, if you can't get anybody up in the rankings, the best next thing is get someone with a big name, right? Very much like the matchup way back when with Chito Vera and Eddie Wineland, right? Or it ended up being Sean O'Malley and Eddie Wineland, right? Like, if you can't get a guy up in the rankings, then fuck it, get a former champion, right? So Ryan Hall, man, I don't know, that's a fun fighter. So I'd love to see him against Kron Gracie. I'd love to see him against Bryce Mitchell. Let me pull up the rankings here at featherweight, and I'll give you a little bit more names rather than those two. I think those two I've been calling some. I've been calling for those fights for quite some time, but let's see here. Men's featherweight. So, Dan Ige would be an interesting. I really like the Bryce Mitchell one. I think that'd be fun. You know what? Be kind of low-key fun. Ryan Hall versus Edson Barbosa. Literally taking things back to UFC 1. Super deadly striker versus super deadly grappler. That'd be kind of fun just to see what happens, right? So Ryan Hall, Edson Barbosa, I'm in. Ryan Hall, Kron Gracie, I'm in. Ryan Hall, Bryce Mitchell, I'm in. There's some good names, man. There's some good names out there for him. He's a fun fighter. I wish we could see him more in the octagon. Unfortunately, he has a very low level of activity. Let me delete this Kylie Jenner tab and look up Ryan Hall real quick. Let's see here. It's funny, in Wikipedia, he's still listed as grappler. Dude, he hasn't fought since July 2019, so it's been over a year. Last time he fought was against Darren Elkins. Unanimous decision. Didn't win by submission. Yeah. Kron Gracie. Bryce Mitchell. Edson Barbosa. I dig all those matchups. I'd suggest those. Good question. I'm going to try to hit up Ryan Hall. I'd love to talk to that guy and interview him, see where he's at. All right. A passive wokeness. He says, Dustin, obviously a Dustin question here by the man. Dustin still hasn't took fight, said. Send the right contract. When Dustin sits out for pay, who do you see slipping into Conor McGregor fight or fight with Conor McGregor? Did he say that? I didn't catch it. Let me see here. Dustin Poirier. Fuck, I'm typing into the wrong. My Bluetooth keyboard is not working. So I make mistakes and I type into it. All right, Dustin Poirier. I want it all. I don't see anything but the right contract. And this is already October. Yeah, I don't see anything, so I can't really speak on that if that's not something I can confirm. But like I said, I really do see that fight between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor happening. And I talked about this on my last live Q&A. This is such a big opportunity that I don't think he would let that slide by just for some pay. I mean, obviously pay is important. I know that he's sort of literally at the very prime of his career. I think this is as good as we're going to see him. This is literally the prime of the prime. He's at the peak right now. And the peak only lasts for so long. Actually, quite not that long. The rise to the peak while still in the prime, right? Because people like to say like, oh, prime has stages. A lot of people just want to say that prime is the very best, right? And I think, in my opinion, prime has stages, right? The early part of your prime, there is the very peak of it, and then there's a downfall where you could say during these years he was the very best. Or these were the very best years of his career. But within that, there are times where a fighter's better, at certain points. And I think he's at the very, very top. I think this is the best Dustin Poirier we'll ever see. He's just that good right now. And frankly, that doesn't last for very long. You can ride that maybe for a couple years, and after that, there's usually a downfall that comes with it. So, he's got sort of. I'm not saying he needs to get in there right now, and he's super old, but. Again, these are his prime years. He wants to make the most of it. And frankly, I think I'd slightly favor McGregor in that rematch, but I think it wouldn't be crazy if Dustin Poirier picks up a victory there, right? I think he's definitely got a lot more momentum than McGregor does, so that's something that was different from the first time they fought. So I think he's going to take that fight, even if the pay is not exactly what he wants, because he knows if he wins that fight, not only his stardom blows up, but usually pay comes along with that. And after that, you can start calling your shots. Look what a win did for Diaz, right? Look at what certain key victories have done for other fighters that have propelled them into stardom, right? Jorge Masvidal, etc. And you can just keep going down the line, naming fighters that have benefited from certain wins. So even Khabib, right? So yeah, I think that fight happens, dude. I really do. I don't think that somebody's gonna slip in there and take that fight. I don't see that happen. I don't see that fight. I don't see that happening. I think Poirier ends up fighting McGregor. I really do. All right, so the Twitter questions are over. I'm going to go over the YouTube live chat right now. So if you got questions, make sure you throw them on the YouTube live chat, and I'll get to them at this point in time. Let me pop the questions here to the side. Let's see here. All right. Immigrant mentality, Miocic. I know people make fun of that, but that's a thing for sure. Let's see here. Will Khamzat destroy Leon Edwards? You know, that's such a weird thing, and there is this thing in MMA where, like, it's weird because, like, in mixed martial arts, like, you can look at someone fight lower level people, and you can see that you can tell someone's world class fighting someone bad. There's this notion where someone has to fight somebody else that's world class in order to see if they're world class or not, right? I don't want to use that word. Let's just say high level. World class is a word that I like to reserve for other conversations. But elite or high level. You can definitely see someone's high level by watching them against somebody that's low level. Now, there might be some things that the low level person might not expose of that other person that certainly should keep certain questions, right? Or should allow you to remain skeptical, right? But, like, for example, watching, I don't know, Priscilla Cachoeira versus Valentina Shevchenko. Certainly, Priscilla Cachoeira, not the most skilled fighter, but just watching what Shevchenko is doing at that point in time, you can tell that's a very good fighter, right? But on the flip side, because a lot of people, again, they say, oh, you're not nobody until you fight somebody. Or you're not somebody until you fight somebody, right? But on the flip side, there's a thing as well where people get certain victories over lower tier opposition, and that raises everyone's idea of how good that person actually is. And again, much like the Gaethje fight with Khabib, and I said this on my Spanish podcast with the MMA Junkie, Hablemos MMA, and I might have said it a bunch of times on my live Q&As, but I thought that was going to be one of those fights that we were going to look back and go, well, of course, Khabib Nurmagomedov was going to beat Justin Gaethje. Of course, because you just see this destroyer in certain matchups, but once... And then you think he's going to do really well in another matchup. But then when you see it play out, you go, well, of course this was going to play out the way it did, right? It's one of those things, hindsight 2020. And I think this could be the case. This could be the case. I think Khamzat is very great. I think he's got, obviously some knockout power. He seems to have decent striking. At the very least, his striking might actually be better than what we think, but we just haven't seen it. Clearly, his wrestling is good. Clearly, he knows what he's doing on the ground. Very good control, very solid submissions. But Leon Edwards is really good, man. That guy's very calculated. He's got a style that shuts down other styles in other people's games. His striking is very good, very well conditioned. All around, very good fighter. He doesn't really have any huge holds. So, I don't know. I think I'm going to go with Leon Edwards in this one. I think there are some big questions as far as how good Khamzat actually is. So I think there is a chance that, those questions will get exposed and we'll get an answer to them in this matchup. Obviously, Leon Edwards being a world-class fighter. I'll actually use that word for him. He's a world-class fighter. But I don't think Khamzat will destroy. I think Leon Edwards will beat him, and I think this will be a matchup very much like the Khabib Justin Gaethje fight that we might see it very competitive now because there are many questions and stuff like that. But I think hindsight, this is going to be one of those matchups where we're going to go, of course he was going to beat him. Obviously he was going to beat him. So obvious that he was going to win. Very much like Rich Franklin, Anderson Silva. A lot of people thought Franklin was going to win. I mean, he was the champion, right? And then once you look back, you're like, dude, of course Silva was going to run through him. I think this is going to be the case, to be quite honest with you. I could be wrong. We'll find out. But I do think Leon Edwards is levels above Khamzat. And frankly, just because he's been in the game longer and he's further into his career, I think Khamzat will eventually become world-class. But as of now, I don't think Khamzat will destroy Leon Edwards at all. I think Leon Edwards wins that fight quite convincingly. Turn up the audio a little more. I did. Hopefully it's a little louder. I'm also talking a little louder. Ollie, what other light heavyweights do you think can beat Israel Adesanya? I personally like Rakic's chances. He's a huge guy. He has shown great wrestling. And I also think Anakalev would be a hard fight for Israel. So let's look at the rankings real quick. Obviously, like, I haven't really taken much time to dive into this question as it just got asked now. So I'll give you kind of like a quick answer rather than an in-depth breakdown. Look, Thiago Santos, I feel like Adesanya will beat him. I think stylistically that's a better matchup for him. Santos, I think Adesanya would be able to counter him. So I think Adesanya probably beats Santos. Dominic Reyes, I think Adesanya beats Dominic Reyes. Glover Teixeira, believe it or not, even though Glover is older and I actually would favor Reyes, this is where MMA math doesn't make any sense. I would favor Santos and Reyes to beat Teixeira. I would actually give maybe Teixeira maybe not a better chance, but I think he has interesting challenges. Poses interesting challenges to Adesanya, like at least on the ground. Like Glover Teixeira, dude, I love that guy. He's a great fighter, and he's very much like in line with like Alistair Overeem, Junior Dos Santos, and these other guys that over time they've lost certain abilities, whether it's their chin, athleticism, etc., and they just work on other areas to make up for them, and they change their style as they get older, which is brilliant. Like only brilliant fighters are able to do that. Being able to reinvent your game at a very late stage and sort of restructure your muscle memory and everything that you know about yourself as a fighter is just you gotta take your hat off for those kind of fighters. And I think Glover is, again, he's in that line. I think he's a guy that's always had good boxing, very good knockout power, but he's gotten slower. His chin's not the same as it used to be. So he definitely still has that in the pocket. We saw him strike with Anthony Smith, but he's, reverting more to his wrestling and grappling because he doesn't need to be as athletic to be good in that aspect, and he's very good. So he's got the size, man. If he's able to close the distance on Adesanya and actually lock up on him, Glover's huge, man. I think he could potentially get the takedown and give him a lot of issues on the ground. He's got that old man jiu-jitsu too. So I don't know. I think the Glover fight would be kind of interesting. The striking is where it gets very not competitive. I think if it was just straight striking, Adesanya would smoke him. He's just way faster, way more accurate. Teixeira's chin is not there anymore, or not what it used to be. Rakic would be an interesting fight. Then right after that, I think the fights get pretty easy with Adesanya. I think Adesanya beats Njiri. I think Adesanya beats Volkan Ozdemir. I think Adesanya beats Anthony Smith, Nikita Krivlov, Johnny Walker, Misha Serkinov, Ryan Spann, Jimmy Krupp. Yep, all those guys. Rua, Paul Craig, he beats them all. I think the top three would be interesting. The top four: Rakic, Teixeira, Reyes, and Santos. And out of all those, maybe Teixeira and Rakic would be the most interesting challenges, right? This is not talking about Jan Blachowicz because he's the champion. And like I said, I would actually favor him in a bout against Adesanya. Let's see. The UK is in lockdown, so it's unlikely Edwards will be able to fight Khamzat. Who do you think the UFC are likely to put him up against? Weidman, Magny, We have been calling him out. Kevin Holland, maybe. I'd like to see the Weidman fight, and I made a case for it here on this live Q&A. I think a couple episodes back. I think that fight makes complete sense. I think it actually makes more sense than the Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards has no business fighting Khamzat Chimaev at this point. He should be fighting someone who's in the top. He should be fighting a Stevie Wonderboy Thompson, somebody who's top 5, not someone who's unranked. Khamzat, on the other side, he should be fighting guys that are outside of the top 10. Chris Weidman is literally at number 10 right now. I think that makes perfect sense. He needs a big name. At the same time, Weidman has a bunch of experience, more experience than any of the guys he's fought, more experience than Gerald and the other couple guys that Khamzat has beaten. And I would say more skilled than the guys that he's beaten as well. Like, I would favor Chris Weidman in a fight against Gerald and against all the other guys that Khamzat has beaten. So again, it will still be a step up in name, a step up in ranking, obviously being the highest ranked opponent he's fought in his career, a bigger step up in skill. It all makes sense, but at the same time, he's not biting into the top 5 like he is with a Leon Edwards fight. So I think the Chris Weidman fight makes sense, and I think it'd be a fight that's competitive, right? Like, I know that Chris Weidman, there's this image of him that he's like super washed up and he's done and he's like not a good fighter, but I think that's a wrong image. Yeah, he's had some tough losses, but like if you really look at the rankings, and I think Silva kind of suffers from this syndrome as well. If you look at the rankings, he is where he's at. Like, I think the number is not respective to his name, because we see that a lot, right? Like, guys have a big name, so they stay in the rankings because they have history, they're former champs, whatever. But I think the rankings got it right with Chris Weidman. He is a top 10 fighter. I know he's had some tough losses, but if you look at Chris Weidman today and what he can do, the man is a top 10 middleweight. I mean, just below that, Edmund Sebastian. Would you favor Chris Weidman and Edmund Sebastian? Keeping in mind how Edmund Sebastian performed in his last bout? Maybe. Can Chris Weidman beat Omar Akhmedov? He already did. Can Chris Weidman beat Marvin Vettori? Probably. Brad Tavares? Probably, yeah. Ian Heinisch? Yeah. And then above that, Uriah Hall? Maybe not. Kevin Gastelum? He actually has a win over Gastelum. Derek Brunson? Maybe not. Darren Till? Joel Romero? Chris Weidman is definitely top 10. I think the rankings in this time, they got it right with him. And that's exactly who Khamzat should be fighting at this point in time. So I would favor a Weidman fight. I believe Weidman on Twitter said he actually accepted the fight. Let me look that up. But he just needed more time to, again, typing into my keyboard. That's not working. Keyboard. But he said he needed some time because he was injured or something like that. Let me look that up on his Twitter real quick, and I'll confirm that with you. Let's see here. All right, so Chris Weidman. I'm not seeing it now, but I swear I saw it. Okay, I think I just found it. No, I'm not seeing it now, but I'm pretty sure he put something like that out there. Let me make sure on his replies. Maybe it's on there. Let's see here. Anyways, I know Chris Weidman wants that fight because he's obviously been very vocal about it on Twitter, saying that Khamzat needs some humbling to do, and he'd be that guy. So yeah, I think it makes complete sense. I think Khamzat versus Chris Weidman makes complete sense. I'd love to see that fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Weidman wins. To be quite honest, I think the only thing I would be kind of concerned about would be the power, because Khamzat clearly has power, clearly has very fast hands. So I could see a scenario where he actually knocks out Weidman, whose chin has sort of, been debilitated over the years. But if he's able to turn it into a grappling match, I wouldn't rule out Chris Weidman picking up a tight victory, much like he did with Omar Akhmedov there, to be quite frank with you. But yeah, that's the route I'd go. Scola Squall 91, RDA, Rafael dos Anjos, dropping back down to lightweight. Do you think he will be able to make another run at the belt and compete with the top guys, or is he washed? Certainly not washed. I think washed would be like, man, I know I sound like the biggest hater for this fighter, but he's just a good example of it. And frankly, I love this fighter. But BJ Penn, that's washed. Like, you're just not competitive. Like Anderson Silva, I don't think he's washed. I don't think he's what he used to be, but more or less, he's still a decent fighter. I think he's top 20 middleweight, right? I mean, if you want to compare it to his prime, certainly I think washed would maybe be a good word there, but washed for me is just done. Like, the guy cannot fight anymore. Chuck Liddell cannot fight anymore, right? Tito Ortiz, right? No longer what he used to be, but as much as people, like to hate on him, the guy's still fairly competitive. Like, he's had some competitive bouts, in his older stages, right? So I don't think RDA is washed. I still think he can get some good victories. Let me pull up his record here. He's actually fighting in 2 weeks against Islam Makhachev. That's going to be a big test. I think that's going to tell us a lot where he's at in his career. So he's fighting Islam Makhachev in the main event of UFC on ESPN Plus 41. Not this weekend, but the following. And I believe he's coming off a loss to Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa is very good. He's a top 10 welterweight. Leon Edwards, a top 3 welterweight. He beat Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee's pretty damn good. He's a top 15 lightweight. And that was not so long ago. That was in 2019. So it's not like it was ages ago. Then he lost to Kamaru Usman. Usman's the champion. And Colby Covington, interim champion, arguably top 2 in that division, right? And then he beat Robbie Lawler, who at the time, Robbie Lawler 3 years ago was far more game than what he is now. Neil Magny, I mean, just look at what Neil Magny's currently doing at welterweight. Tarek Saffiedine, a very good fighter. And then he lost prior to that when he was at lightweight to Tony Ferguson. So his run is a little bit deceiving. Like, you might look at it and be like, yeah, this guy's washed, as you're mentioning in your question here. But again, losing to Michael Chiesa, Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman, and Colby Covington, you can still be a damn good fighter and lose to all those guys, right? So I think the Islam Makhachev is going to be an interesting one, because Islam is a rising contender, up-and-coming guy that's clearly a very skilled guy. There is some questions about his potential precisely because he hasn't versed these commodities, these established fighters such as Rafael dos Anjos. I believe this will be the first one, if I'm not mistaken. Let me pull off Makhachev's record here. But Makhachev has had some difficulty getting opponents. I actually talked to Javier Mendez extensively about this. Yeah. David Ramos is good. Armin Tasukurov, that was, I believe, on short notice. Cajun Johnson, Gleison Tebow, Nick Lentz, Chris Wade. All those guys are fine, but they're not RDA. So this is going to be a big test for both. Answer where RDA is at. But look, if RDA is able to pick up a victory over a rising contender who's in the top 10, someone who's young and hungry, he's game, man. I'm not saying he's going to become champion. Certainly there are some tough bouts for him in that division, but given that he's got size, the experience, he's very well-rounded. He's got good grappling, good wrestling, good submissions, decent striking. I think he's competitive with some of the top 5 guys in the division. I think right now, as it stands at lightweight, I think that RDA is a top 10. I mean, he beats Kevin Lee, he beats Alec Quinta, he beats Diego Ferreira. I think he beats Paul Felder, Charles Oliveira. That'd be interesting. Dan Hooker. That'd be interesting. And that's when you start getting into the top 6. Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson. I mean, Tony Ferguson put a beating on him pretty bad. Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, right? So I say he's still a top 10, just right outside the top 5. That's kind of my gauge of RDA, but we'll see. I wouldn't rule out a potential run at the title, especially since Khabib Nurmagomedov, the unstoppable force, is no longer in that weight class, or allegedly, right? He might come back. I don't know. That's something else we can get into if you guys want. Fiorentina, that's right. Some of the best kits. You look like Ian McCall behind you. Yeah, I get that a lot. If business is business, will Conor and Dustin fight? Any updates on it, and who else could be an opponent for Tony besides Chandler? Frankly, many people can be an opponent for Tony Ferguson, besides Chandler, but none of those would make sense. People that make sense, only Chandler makes sense. Maybe, only Chandler makes sense. What are you going to do? Rematch with Gaethje? No. Tony is, Poirier is tied up with McGregor. Dan Hooker, maybe. But I think it's Chandler, and then after that, a couple guys that make a little bit of sense, but not really. I think Michael Chandler is the perfect opponent for Tony Ferguson right now. Best introduction for him, good opponent for Tony Ferguson. So, yeah. And I got no updates as far as the Conor-Dustin fight. All right, let's see here. Looking good, Danny. Thank you, Sam. Who do you think is the 145-pound champ in a year? That's interesting. I would say Volkanovski. Still. I'd say Volkanovski, yep. I'm trying to think who can get in that mix. Yeah, Volkanovski. All right, let's see here. Dustin deleted the tweet 2 days ago. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I was looking for that thing. Do Fiorentina shirt. Is it Batistuta? Yes, sir. Batistuta, one of the greatest players, Argentine players. Just phenomenal. I remember when I was a kid, when I was like, I still lived in Colombia. I was maybe like 8, 9. That's when like Batistuta was ripping it. Great player. Anyways, I think this is the last question on the YouTube live chat. Again, if you want to throw questions, do it now. I got a few more minutes, so I might answer this one and dip out. Unless if a few more come in, I might do 1 or 2 more after this one. But Christopher Flamini says, what did you think of Luke's appearance on JRE? Seems like they had a great chemistry. Yeah. To be honest, I haven't finished it. I'm like, I always listen to those things like in parts. I have YouTube Premium. By the way, I recommend it if you guys don't have it. I know it's like $11 a month, but it's so nice. Because like you can listen to so much. There's so much stuff to like consume on YouTube. And like with YouTube Premium, you can lock your phone. So it's kind of like you're listening to music or a podcast. And you don't have to have the screen on. Because if you lock it, then it pauses. That's really nice. That's a nice option. Also, no ads. That's super nice. Starting videos just like that. I'm constantly on YouTube because of my job and what I do. So for me, YouTube Premium is a very good investment. But anyways, I because those are 3 hours and a half. Those are quite lengthy. I don't listen to them in a whole because I'm very busy and I'm doing a bunch of other things. So I kind of listen to them in parts. Sometimes I'll listen like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, like that. And I'm pretty far into it. I think I have like, I might even have the tab pulled up. No, it's in my other computer. But yeah, I think I might be like 2.5 hours into it, maybe a little bit around there. I think I have like an hour left. But so far from everything that I've seen and heard, you know, it was a good appearance by Luke. I'm very happy for him. He got that opportunity. Obviously, it's a big platform, so usually, it exposes a lot of what you do, and I think he does very great work in this MMA space. And clearly, it was shown by that conversation as well. Very knowledgeable on all kinds of facets of the fight game, not only from technique-wise, not only from storylines and what's going on in the actual game, but also some of the more legal stuff, right? As he talked about, like PEDs, the UFC lawsuit going on, and fighters' rights. I mean, so much more other things. But yeah, he had a great convo. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It was informative so far. I haven't finished it. But yeah, I thought it was great. Good for him. About time, because that dude deserves a lot of credit and a lot of exposure. I mean, he's been killing it with Morning Combat, so very happy for him. But yeah, he's a good dude. Good dude. He's helped me a lot in my career, so very happy for him that he got that opportunity. He deserves it for sure. But yeah, good stuff. I hope to see more in the future. Joe Rogan should definitely hit him up and do more podcasts. They were a good combo. Okay, this one's a good one. This is more in my field here. Unadapted. Do you believe Aldana's late introduction into fighting will keep her from overcoming the hump that it takes to reach the elite levels. I feel similarly about Sean O'Malley. Perhaps a camp change will help. So, I actually talked to Irene. It's fairly recent. I put up an update on MMAJunkie.com regarding the foot surgery that she had for her left foot. A lot of people don't know this. I believe we were the only outlet to report this on MMA Junkie. But yeah, she suffered a broken foot 2 days prior to her Holly Holm bout, hitting pads. It was like a bit of a freak accident. But, she was already in Fight Island. COVID tests were all good. I mean, at that point in time, you just fight. You don't pull out. Plus, she had already pulled out because of COVID in August. So it would have been a big blow to do that to the UFC, right? Plus, she felt like she was kind of okay. Like, she was in a lot of pain, but she could overcome it. So she did the fight anyways. I did ask her before the fight, and I made this a clear point. I'm like, what about the wrestling? Like, Holly Holm has changed her style, and sometimes when she faces high-level strikers, she tends to go to her wrestling, which has become very, very good. Are you prepared for that? And she said, yeah, of course, I'm ready, blah, blah, kind of like a very normal answer. And then after, when I interviewed her post-defeat, that's also on the Hablemos MMA feed, just the interview alone. If you speak Spanish, you can check that out. I'm not saying this is worrisome, but she did say, like, it's not really wrestling that I need to work on. Because I told her, I'm like, clearly your striking is very good. It's one of the best strikings in the division. But the big hole here, the big issue that we saw in your fight was the wrestling. Is this something that you're going to focus on moving forward? And she said, no, I need to focus on everything, and including wrestling, but really my all-around game. I was ready for this fight, and there was a lot that I couldn't show. So it is kind of difficult to gauge because, at the same time, she did enter with a broken foot, and it's not something that she's just saying, and then she's like, oh, no, I'm fine. I just need to take some time off. No, she actually did have surgery on that thing. So it was legit, And, with a bad foot, trying to wrestle, trying to strike, trying to move, I mean, that's just tough. You can wrestle your ass off, maybe with a bad hand or, maybe with other areas of your body, maybe not being 100%, but your leg, your foot, that's kind of tough. And even in that fight, I said it on the podcast, I think she showed some good things. Like the Wizard was very tight, and that was something that she clearly was working out throughout camp. And she had a lot of answers to what Holly Holm was doing with the wrestling. It's just Holm was able to chain it and then just overpower her and again beat her in that department. So I'm curious how she looks in her next bout. She told me that she's looking to about a month of rehab, and then in a month she can start training camp again lightly and get back into it if it all goes well. And she's looking for a February-March return. I'd like to see her against a wrestler, to see what she's really, like a Juliana Peña or somebody, to see what she's really got, right? With a healthy foot, of course. But again, she did, like you said, started this very late. She was like 25 years old when she started. That's quite late. She's only like 32 now. So 7 years into it, and she's in the top 5 of the UFC women's bantamweight division. So I would actually say she's elite. She's reached the elite level. I mean, she was headlining an ESPN event against a former champion and a very historic figure for women's MMA, Holly Holm. She's currently ranked in the top 5. So I would already say she's in the elite, just at the very bottom of it. I guess this question would be better suited if you were to ask, would she ever be world class, right? Would she ever be a top 3, top 2 title challenger? Would she ever fight for a belt? I don't know the answer. She's clearly evolving and getting better from what I see in every fight. So I don't know if the late start in the game would be an impediment. I think maybe it just prolonged things. She's very good shape. She's in very good shape. So I don't know. I have doubts, but I think she could. She has the potential. I want to see her step in the cage 100% healthy with a wrestler and see what she's got then. But I think she's already in the elite. She's a very good fighter, and it was just unfortunate, the foot thing. And look, she even said it. Maybe I would have been 100% healthy, and I would have lost still. But maybe I would have shown a little bit more of my game and would have had a better performance. Aldana versus Pennington rematch. Yeah, I also like that. Yeah. She actually had some complications entering that fight. I believe she was on her period, from what she told me. And that like messed up her weight cut, and she wasn't feeling well. She was sick. And even then, she took that fight to a split decision. But yeah, I'd watch a Pennington rematch. Why not? All right, this one would be the last one, and I will dip out. Marco Aceves says, will Khabib go for that 30-0? Dana seems comfortable saying maybe. Can we get into this? Yeah, for sure. I said it, man. I've said it a couple times. Look, Khabib lost his father, and immediately, like, even before that, when his father was having a bunch of health complications because of coronavirus, he already knew he had to defend the belt against Justin Gaethje, because Justin Gaethje became interim champ. And even though Dana White was very nice about this, saying, look, Khabib has done a bunch of things for this company. I'm going to give that dude as much time as he needs. Take your time, champ. You know, I'm not going to talk to him. I'm not going to pressure him. He needs time to grieve and sort of process the death of his father. Dude, even though someone's not pressing you about, like, bro, what's up, man? When are you fighting? When can we book this title defense? There's still that pressure, because you know there's a to-do there. You do have something in your to-do list. You know, Justin Gaethje is waiting for you, you know, talking about you. The media is asking Dana, because rightfully so. I mean, these are important questions. When is that title defense going to be booked? When is that going to be booked? The whole world is wondering when you're going to return. So there is that pressure. He hasn't really had time to decompress and really think about it all. So I think, you know, maybe with some time off, he would think things through and maybe return, because I know his mother said that, you know, she wants him to stop fighting because his father's no longer around. But at the same time, his father's wish was 30-0, right? So I could see a scenario where his mother has a change in mind and he wants to honor that, and he's down to do one more fight. So again, I think when he says he's retired, I really do believe him. But I also believe that there could be a space where he takes some time off, he processes everything, and he goes, okay, one more. Let's do this. I'm back. And he does a big one, whether it's with GSP or Conor McGregor if he wins. I do believe that. The good thing for him is that there's a few top contenders fighting each other right now, and there's not that clear number one guy. So he has the opportunity to take some time off here, not defend his title for quite some time and take a breath of fresh air. I think he does, man. I think he returns. I've had a change in mind in the last few days. I think when he retired, I think it really felt very legit, and I think it was legit, and it is legit. But I think he's going to come back. I think he's going to come back and fight one more time. They're not vacating the belt for now. That seems promising. I think he's going to realize he's got a lot more to give. I think he's going to realize there's a lot more money on the table, you know, to be made. I know that's not his biggest priority, but, you know, it's always nice. And I think he wants to honor eventually, you know, the wish of his father. So I think he does come back. I think he does come back, but, you know, we won't see him anytime soon. We'll see him probably like late 2021. I think so. All right. With that being said, I'm gonna call it quits here. I appreciate everybody that submitted questions via Twitter, submitted questions via the YouTube live chat. Remember, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this. I'll give you a nice little retweet. And tell your friends about it. That's it's a good way of keeping this thing growing and you know, and continuing to grow, and therefore we can do more things on this channel, right? So again, I appreciate the support. Have fun watching the fights tonight at Bellator 251, and then this weekend at UFC on ESPN Plus 40, right? I don't know if I'm going to be doing a recap after it, but maybe if you guys are down, tweet me. I could be interested in that and doing a live recap for that event. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But until then, if not, I'll talk to you guys next Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, all right? So enjoy your weekend and stay safe, people.